Good morning and welcome to the channel. So today we're in Curacao. Despite previously us thinking it was pronounced Curacao, it's definitely Curacao. So this morning we're off to do a bit of a highlights tour and then we get the rest of the day to ourselves to explore this beautiful city. If you want to see what we get up to, stay tuned.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. We are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for adventure.
We left Aruba and headed to Curacao. It was a fairly short overnight cruise, and when we arrived, there was a magnificent rainbow leading to the pot of gold that is Curacao. We departed the ship to find our tour and were welcomed by locals in magnificent colourful dresses dancing, and some musicians that were kind enough to show me how their contraption worked. We had booked with Viator for an eerie tour showing us the highlights of the island. The bus was interesting, bright and colourful, and so was this strange body fluid cleanup kit. Who knows what they use this bus for when it's not on tour? Our guide named Emma was a teacher, and she taught us about the dark history of the island. That history was steeped in slavery, with over 100,000 slaves auctioned at this very building. We were also shown this monument to freedom. Curacao was the very last island to abolish slavery. We thought the houses in Bermuda were colourful, but they were nothing in comparison to these beautiful buildings in Curacao. These buildings were of original Dutch design, and they were made from what they had at hand, basically coral, sand, limestone, seawater. Although beautiful, their upkeep was very expensive and challenging due to the concrete cancer that invaded most of the buildings. Upkeep for the treasured buildings was supported by UNESCO.
As part of the trip, our guide Emma took us on a walking tour of the alleys of Obtrabanda. The residents of these buildings were able to decorate the walls with murals of their choosing. The murals were bright and colourful and simply breathtaking. Everywhere you turned, there was a mural more colourful and more beautiful. They even decorated the underside of bridges with these spectacular murals. There were sculptures of all shapes and sizes, even some chairs. They didn't look very comfortable though. No space was off limits for these talented artists. They even decorated the stairs and ceilings.
It was time to board the bus again and learn a little more about Curacao. A once prosperous fuel refining country was now reliant on tourism. We made a short stop at one of the ancient forts that gave us magnificent views of the coastline and the two cruise ships that were in port. We crossed the large bridge right over the harbour. It gave us magnificent views of both sides of Williamstead. Curacao is basically solid rock, 65% coral stone and 35% lava stone. The ground is so hard that all of the graves have to be above ground as it's too difficult to dig. At one point in history, they decided it might be a great idea to grow oranges, but due to that solid ground, they didn't grow well at all and turned out to be too bitter even for animals to eat. Their loss was our gain, with the oranges being used to make what we call blue Curacao. This orange-based liqueur was delicious and came in many flavours.
These are the original bottles and they had the texture of an orange.
We left the Curacao distillery, had a cold beer on the bus and headed to the beach club. We made a brief stop to see the flamingos.
We arrived at Kokomo Beach and were greeted with spectacular views. We had an hour to spend at this beautiful location. We couldn't resist the opportunity to get back into the water again and do some snorkeling. This time, however, we were the only ones snorkeling, so we had it all to ourselves. The water was crystal clear and the sea life abundant. We were in our element. The great thing about snorkeling in the Caribbean is that the water is so wonderful and warm. And in this case, it was quite shallow, so we were able to drift along without having to dive down much at all and be surrounded by beautiful fish.
If you're enjoying our videos, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and get notified so you find out where we're off to next.
We could have spent all day snorkeling in this paradise, but time was short, so we had to make the most of it. There was a beach bar located right on the water. There were some interesting customers at this beach bar. Apparently, these iguanas have 2 penises, and the locals make a stew from them because they believe it is like Viagra. We didn't try any iguana stew.
We stopped back at the ship for a quick costume change and then headed back out to explore. We started at the Rift Fort. Now this fort has some old cannons at both sides, and in actual fact, the Rift Fort has a sister fort on the other side of the harbour. I could imagine these ports firing cannons at pirates in days gone by. Today, however, the fort has been converted into a shopping mall. Sharon found all sorts of interesting things to look at here. Williamstadt was divided into 2 halves, separated by this floating pontoon bridge. It's called Queen Emma Bridge, and every time a vessel needs to pass through, some tugboats either open or close this pontoon bridge. We were warned not to leave it too late when coming back to the ship. Previously, people have been caught with the bridge open and they were unable to get back across the river. It's an interesting sensation crossing this bridge. And when you get to the other side, you're met by a shopping precinct full of beautiful shops. The buildings look magnificent and they're just so colourful. And so are the many sculptures and paintings that you can see on the sides of the buildings as you explore this side of town. Now, douchey is a local term, a little bit similar to how we use mate here in Australia. It kind of means darling. We found the Venezuelan boat traders. These guys sail across the strait every day to sell their wares on a kind of black market that everyone seems to turn a blind eye to. There's a famous area in Curacao called Handelsade, and it's this group of colonial Dutch buildings that are absolutely spectacular. We liked them that much, we bought a watercolour to take home of these beautiful buildings. We really enjoyed escaping the everyday here in Curacao. Where's your next trip to?